My guess is that you know where you live fairly well, depending on how long you've lived there. But imagine if we picked up your house and we took it to another part of the world that you'd never been to, um, but we plonked your house down there. You don't really know the area. There's some things that are familiar, but there's other things outside of that that are just not familiar. How do you navigate when you've been picked up and moved and put somewhere completely different? The elephant in the room, which is menopause. Now, the reason that I want to talk about this is because, as a 51-year-old woman, as I am at the point of recording this, I have spent many years experiencing this, but probably not many actually talking about it publicly. And it's only been the last couple of years that I've been invited by many of my corporate clients to deliver webinars for their staff talking about this topic, the elephant in the room of menopause. And I think one of the main reasons is because now they're starting to understand, and going by the research from the International Menopause Society, it's roughly about 45% of women really start to struggle and feel unsupported through their menopause journey in the workplace. And that's a significant number of people. There's so many things that we know are familiar for us during this time, but equally, there's a huge amount of stuff that starts to happen that is unknown, can be confusing, and yeah, can start to feel a little bit lost. So, if I put this in context for those of you either that aren't of the age of experiencing perimenopause and menopause, or maybe your body won't go through that process for whatever reason. But my guess is, regardless of what age you are, you will have experienced at some point puberty. And when we've gone through the process of puberty, it can seem like your house has been picked up and you've been put somewhere else that is really confusing, because you've gone from knowing who you are, this child who likes certain things, who doesn't like other things, who is maybe playful, maybe gets lost in books, maybe loves creating stuff, or is really sporty or writing or whatever it is. Kind of, you've really got a sense roundabout until sort of like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, depending on when you hit puberty, of kind of getting to know who you really are. And then this sideswipe of puberty starts, and you lose sight of who you are, who you thought you were, sort of becomes confusing. You don't like the same things that you did even like a week ago. 1 minute you're really happy and then you're sad. Then bodily functions start to change, and it can seem confusing. That's the main word that I think about when I think about puberty, when I went through it very early at the age of 9. But equally, that's the parallel for me of what I noticed through the transition of perimenopause into menopause. Perimenopause can start at any age, really tends to be sort of mid 40s upwards, but there's no guarantees, and some people can go through it a lot earlier through varying reasons, whether it's been surgically induced or whether there's just people can start it in their 30s or even in their 20s. But I think it's important for us to start to recognize that it's not just a physical process, that it's a neurological process. It's something that the hormonal shifts that we experience dramatically in some cases, it can seem quite an intense period of time, and it's hard to articulate when your house has been picked up and put in another country and the pictures on the wall seem familiar, but what's outside just doesn't seem familiar, and therefore those two things don't kind of match up on what do you do. And I think that's what, for me in particular, and what I notice with my clients, and I sort of didn't get it when I started speaking with, so I've been coaching now for 18 and a half years and professionally. And what I noticed is, especially about 10 years ago and prior to that, obviously I wasn't in the experience of perimenopause and menopause, but I noticed through the women that I was talking with how these amazingly successful women in senior positions in the workplace, great management roles, really achieving some phenomenal things, both in the family home as well as in the workplace, suddenly started to experience things that they hadn't done before, but not just from a physiological perspective, And for many of them, it was the cognitive stuff that showed up first. Memory started to go, getting really confused in meetings of what it is that was being spoken about even 2-3 minutes beforehand. The goldfish mode, as one of my clients referred to it, of genuinely not being able to recall what was just said in order to be able to comment on it or give feedback or actually answer the question. And that can be quite an unsettling experience. And I've experienced that for myself, even on the stage in front of, I think there was about 500 people at the time when I said a sentence in my presentation and then genuinely went blank. I had no idea what I just said. I had no idea what slide was coming next. I didn't have notes in front of me. Now, because of the kind of work that I do and the work that I do on myself, I know that panicking in that situation is not going to be helpful. So, taking a few deep breaths and being comfortable, I'm quite practiced in being comfortable with silences and pauses. Is I took that deep breath and in that moment just thought, what's the best thing I can do right now? I was over one side of the stage. My notes were over the other side of the stage, which was about 15, 20 feet away from me. And I just thought, what would I do if this was a professional show? There's numerous stories I can tell you of where very well rehearsed, professional, even very well known actors have either forgotten something or the set's not worked or some random act of nature has happened, including an actress throwing up on stage during the middle of a period performance. Um, and it's what would we do in that situation? And very often, the easiest way to navigate that kind of situation would be to bring the audience in. So, someone, sometimes myself, sometimes other member of the staff, or even the actors, would flag up. As you can see, we've got a bit of a technical issue here. Please bear with us whilst we, reset and restore it and see if we can pick it up from where we left off. So I did that. I literally said to the audience, have you ever had one of those moments where you've gone blank? I didn't reference it as being perimenopausal at the time. And I would say, I guess, about 60, 70% of the room raised their hands. And so I said, well, that's what's happened right now. I've had one of those moments and my mind has gone blank. Can anyone remind me what I've just said or what I was just talking about? And a number of people shouted things out. And I was like, yes, now I know. Got my train of thought and off I went again. What shocked me about that wasn't actually that people were willing to help, but it was the amount of people at the end that came up and said, oh my gosh, that happens so often to me. I love the way that you navigated it. I'm going to do that more often and be honest and open with what's going on rather than judging myself. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I would say in relation to both puberty, but also with perimenopause and menopause, is actually practice the art of kindness, self-kindness. We can't control the process. We can do our best to navigate it and work it out. And regardless of which route and what your experiences are of it, some of you may want to go down the HRT route or any other medical route in that sense. You've got to do what's right for you. And what I know, haven't been down that route, haven't needed to myself, but I've got many, many friends, clients, colleagues that have done the same. Is that all of them have to navigate, because it's not a one size fits all kind of process. You've got to experiment to be able to find the way for yourself. And I actually think it's exactly the same even if you're taking an alternative route. Is experiment with the things that make a difference for you. So for me, for example, I have found medicinal mushrooms and specifically lion's mane as a medicinal mushroom, which is, you can find in various different formats. I have found that extremely helpful to support from a cognitive perspective. I found that I was forgetting things way less. I was much calmer even when I did forget things. So that was has been something that I have sustained for a good probably 4 or 5 years now within that process. So it's important for us to recognize that this is about a process of learning what the body needs. I can't work out what this body needs next week in relation to this process. I can't even work out what it needs tomorrow because it changes so quickly. And I think that's the thing that many of us find hard, both whether we are the person experiencing it, but equally those around us. It can be a real point of confusion for us all because what worked yesterday might not work today. Um, that's where I think the conversation needs to come in a little bit more. So energy levels, for example, are something that I experienced sort of coming in after the cognitive function had stabilized a little bit. For me personally, it was when my energy levels were all over the place. I could be just about managing to get myself into the office and get through a day, and cheekily having a sneaky little nap on the rug in front of me if need be. That's the benefits of working for yourself. But sometimes it was really challenging for me. And it didn't matter what I'd eaten. It didn't matter how much sleep I'd had the night before or even the quality of the sleep. My energy levels were on the floor. And then there were other times when I could go out for big long walks or I might go to the gym and I'd have more energy. It was truly a day-to-day navigation. Sometimes it meant I was going to bed at 8 o'clock at night in order to be able to be sleep. Now, one of the things, again, that I have found really helpful, I've discovered a product which has magnesium, and I put that on my feet before I go to bed, and I find that that really helps me get a good night's sleep. But I don't need that every time. It's navigating those moments. And I think that in the world that we live in at the moment, the way it's conditioned, I think we're looking for a one size fits all quick fix solution rather than recognizing that it's like the weather, especially in the UK. It's you've kind of got to go with layers. You've got to go with all the different options and work out what you need in that moment. The stereotypical things that we think of when it comes to this transitional time for a woman is moody and hot flushes. And it's so much more than that. You know, depending on the research you look at, they reckon there's somewhere around about 60 different symptoms that women can experience. And I think it becomes about looking at what's going on at that point for you, which is why I think there's not a one size fits all. It's looking at what it is that you need. And it's not the moment you go into it, you're going to need the same thing for the whole point of the transition, because it's a transition. You know, puberty wasn't one night, it happened over a period of time. This is exactly the same. Therefore, it is about learning to navigate that and look at it to get connected to what it is that works for you. What is it that's going to work for your body and also from a cognitive perspective? I personally think there are many gifts at this period of time. I think there is an opportunity to face the things that we have kind of pushed to the back of our minds for a long period of time, or we've just kind of like dealt with if they've come up, or we've ignored them. I think that this process gives us quite a cleansing period to bring them to the fore. Now, many people might just go, yeah, but I don't want to deal with those, and push them away. And I get that. And that means that what you'll be doing is carrying that on throughout the rest of your life. Bring them to the fore and find the way that you can actually look at them and challenge them. What we don't realize is that many things that have either happened in our life or the perceptions that we've had of ourselves, they stick around, and they're the things that are navigating. They're the bits that are the guiding force unless you address them. And if you don't address them, then that automatic GPS of those are set, and that's taken away your free will. Free will is being able to see them and going, is this something I want to do? Or is this something I want to put down? Is this an identity that no longer serves or is helpful, or actually isn't even true? It was just a perception. And through conversations with a lot of my peers, I notice all of us are experiencing this. And this is something where I think that finding a group that you can have a conversation with can be really helpful. Now, whether that's an informal group of it being friends coming together. I know that one of my colleagues runs a menopause group, which is like a cafe where you can go for a walk together and just have a chat about where you're at that period in time. And I think this is something where it could be beneficial within the workplace, because I think that by providing that well-being conversation, it's an opportunity for us to just go, yeah, this is what's going on for me today, and this is the support that I would like, even if I don't know how to get there. And other people, if we think about, if we go back to when we were living in tribes, this is what we would have been doing around the campfire, is having these conversations to learn from the elders around us. And the youngers would be there listening into these conversations, so they would be prepared too. But in this world where, we're given the illusion that we're really connected, but actually we're probably less connected than we were before. Actually, we're missing out on those conversations. We may not be around those elders, whether that's grandparents, parents, aunts and uncles, that we tend not to have those conversations. And actually, genetically, it's helpful to have that, because very often there's similarities that are passed down. So even if you can't have those conversations from a familial perspective, then having them with your peers can be really helpful. So my friends that have been through this, sort of like they're about 4, 5, 6 years ahead of me, it's been so helpful to get clarity on what they're experiencing, not because then I'm looking to match anything that I experience into that to try and force it to fit. But it's so helpful to see that there are some patterns that emerge, even if it is just going, oh, there's a cognitive thing that's going on for them, or I've got a cognitive thing, but it's different. It's a different cognitive thing, or whether it's a physiological thing, whatever it may be, it gives us an opportunity to be able to do that. So having that environment and enabling yourself to not only be supported, but be supportive. And I think very often as women, we get that round the other way. We look to support before we get support, wherein actually we need to look to be supported first in order to be supportive. And sometimes that can come from us. It doesn't always have to come from others. But I think it is important to start to recognize the value of that stream of communication. And one day I was thinking about the connection between menopause and puberty, and because I went through puberty at such a young age and didn't have any peers that were really going through it, and certainly at 10 years old, I remember there was myself and one other girl in school. That we then weren't allowed to do PE. We always had to just sit in the changing area, just the two of us. And we didn't really have things in common. So I don't really remember us being able to converse very much. But other than that, there was no support to have this conversation about what was going on. And I was thinking about how weird that seemed. And I was drawing the parallels between puberty and menopause. And then I thought about, well, hang on a second, what's the part that's consistent? Because me, in quotation marks, was there prior to puberty. Me was there during puberty. Me has been there prior to menopause. And me is there during this menopausal process. So what is the quotation of me? What is me? What is that consistent part? And I haven't fully settled on a word that fits for me, but I would invite you, if you are experiencing this point in your life, is to start to look for it for yourself. And the things that I look at are that inner wisdom, that inner trust, or that knowing. That to me is a consistent, or you might refer to it as inner peace, or your soul, or your spirit, the light within. To me, it doesn't really matter what the word is that you use, as long as it resonates with you. But there's something of whatever that quotation of me is that's always been there. And that's still there, even though these experiences are going on. And that's the bit that I long and look for actively to connect to. That's the sense that I am looking to connect to during this process for myself. That's the part that helps me navigate, even though the physiological processes may be intense. I can look for that consistency to give me a bit of stability, even if there's some cognitive wobbles that are going on, like I referred to earlier with the presentation. It was that inner consistent part of wisdom, that knowing, that enabled me to go, what would be the best way to navigate this right now? I'm using the term navigate a lot because I think that's what we have to do when we need to look at what we're going through. If it's this point of menopause, so much is changing that actually we're in a different place. We're not where we've been before. There may be some similarities. So don't try and use a map from before to navigate where you are now. It's about looking up. It's about looking around. It's about looking within so that you can create a new map, sometimes moment by moment, so that you can navigate these different times and utilize your inner knowing to guide you within that. Now, what I'd love to know from those of you that are in this process is put in the comments, what have you found that's really worked for you? Because sometimes we can offer some things out, like I have with the magnesium cream and with the lion's mane. Those two things have been fantastic for me. They're not for everybody. So I'd love to know in the comments what's worked for you, and equally how you have found support with your peers and through family as well during this time. I'd also love to know from those of you that are not experiencing this, but somebody in your life is. So it might be a parent, it might be an aunt, it might be a colleague, it might be your wife, your spouse that you are watching going through this turmoil of a time, and you don't know how to support. So I'd love to know both in the comments how you have found ways to support them, but equally how best, or what's the support that you might need in order to be able to support them. The one thing that I would say that has really been like a smack around the face for me is to recognize that the best way through this is through kindness, with a great deal of kindness, a great deal of compassion, and also being as calm as you can to work it out, to find your new map. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Coming to Your Senses, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.